Gene Massey with Media Shares, and we want to start with Eddie down there and go down the line because this is a standalone panel that'll be on the internet again later. So if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Sure. My name's Eddie Lauren. I'm launching very shortly impacthousing.com. It's a REIT that's Reg A plus. I've been in the business of workforce and affordable housing for 30 years. And oftentimes the product that I buy is not as sexy or institutional as, the brochure quality guys on Wall Street want to buy, although I've done a ton of business with them. So I decided when this opportunity of Reg A came out, I said, well, this is a great way to democratize impact investing, which basically impact investments are a double bottom line. Not only can you get a financial return, but you get a social return as well. So what a great opportunity to reach the masses, give them an opportunity to get a great return, and do some good to help this housing crisis, especially post-election. The affordable housing business is really on its, because nobody knows what a tax credit is worth, and that's how most of things have been funded. So if taxes were 39% and now potentially 15%, there's a huge gap in the capital stack. So my solution is let's buy as much of the blighted property that already exists at a much lower basis than building new product at $400 a door. We can buy it at $80, $100 a door, put in 10, give people a clean, safe, affordable place to live, treat them with respect and dignity, and they'll have a great place to be proud of, and they can live and prosper, and we do our best at a lower basis without government subsidies to make a difference in people's lives and help solve the affordable housing crisis. So that's my mission in life.
Wow. And Joan, tell us about ComputerShare.
I'm Joan Dromey. I'm the Senior Product Manager for the Private Markets Group at ComputerShare, and we are a stock transfer agent, which means that we keep track of who owns stock or other types of securities in a variety of different types of companies. Our business has largely been with publicly held companies, but 2 years ago we started the Private Markets Group, and we've designed a product that's specifically for privately held companies, which come in an amazing variety. Not just Jobs Act companies. We have all comers. We're very agnostic. I once had someone ask me if we can keep records for an LLC, and I just said, well, we have C Corps, we have S Corps, we have LLCs, we have trusts, we have all kinds of things. So we're very agnostic. We just keep a lot of records, and we do a lot of different types of processing of those records. There are a great many things that can happen to a company's cap table in the course of its corporate life. So we try and handle the back-end nuts and bolts of the record keeping so that when something like Facebook goes public, if you bought that early on or at some point in its life before it went public, you have an accurate accounting of what you own. Because let's just say if I had owned some of that, I'd want to make sure that I was getting my fair share when it went public. And I also use them as my poster child for why private companies should use a stock transfer agent, because it took us a year to clean up their records and make them forensically clean and pretty. It was not a fun task because, and I think some of you have heard me say this before, when you raise money and you fund your company with other people's money, usually your core business is running your company and making it grow and not necessarily keeping track of the investor records. So let's just say, and I know Sarah Hanks has a few war stories because we've exchanged them about this, you can get the shoe box with sticky notes on it. You can get a spreadsheet that has all kinds of little comments and strike-throughs. And usually none of it is up to date because even though this is important stuff, it's not immediate and it doesn't demand immediate attention. And it's also not something that people hand off to the shipping clerk. So it's usually the CEO or the founder or the CFO, if they have one, that's doing it. And it's not the first thing on his task list on any given day, month, or week, or even year. So the records don't always stay in pristine and wonderful condition. And let's just say that if transfers are being done, I wouldn't want to bet my life or even any reasonable amount of money on whether those transfers are being done in a legal and compliant manner. So we help people with that.
And Michael?
I'm still Michael Homeier. Homeier Law is a securities, corporate, and transactional law firm, particularly active in EB5 and investment crowdfunding, as well as outside those areas. And as Joan was speaking, it occurred to me that, again, one of these interesting lessons learned from EB5 that could apply to the crowdfunding industry is one of the ways in which Congress is acting to mandate improved integrity in EB5 is by coming up with additional ideas to protect investors along the lines of enhanced fund administration, regular financial and investor reporting to investors, that is, and enhanced due diligence during the entire life of an EB5 project. And I could see how the types of measures that Joan's talking about adopted in the crowdfunding industry would mean that when the attention ultimately moves by government to crowdfunding from EB5, that crowdfunding will already be well in place because it has these kinds of integrity enhancement measures already there.
Great. And I'm Gene Massey with Media Shares. We primarily do marketing consulting for online offerings, and we also do live internet broadcasts and a lot of video. First question. We have unique three people. We have an issuer, a company that does the back end for all the transactions, and a securities attorney. Now, I am constantly called by people that don't have a dime.
But they want other people's dimes?
But they're looking for money. And they always offer you, we'll pay you a percentage, and I said, no, we don't do a percentage, but and equity is questionable. Most of them don't have any money at all. Should they try to do any type of online offering, or should they go to Uncle Charlie?
Uncle Charlie.
Friends, family, and fools.
Yeah, we did a thing.
Group, yeah.
Yep.
We did a panel before that with some marketing people that said the same thing. If you don't have any money at all,
Life's not fair.
Craig was saying Craig was saying earlier that a lot of people don't have revenues. So what's the difference in if you're not having revenues and not having money at all?
That's
That's
two
not the
very
same,
different
yeah.
things.
So talk about that. Tell me about that.
Well, if all you have is an idea that is not necessarily either a bankable or an investable commodity.
Well, usually people come and they have something. They have some sort of product. They just don't maybe have traction that a venture capitalist.
Traction or track record?
Traction. You know, where they don't have quarter-over-quarter growth, where they had 10,000 users last month, and this month they've got 100,000. They don't have anything like that. But they do have a product. You know, they've designed this thing, and they can show it to you, and it looks like it works, and, you know, but what they don't have is a lot of customers. They don't have any money, so to speak.
The best education I've seen about that is Shark Tank.
I was just
Because,
come back to me when you have
Yeah.
some revenues, kid.
or come back to me when you have something that's for real, because you could have a product and perhaps you're spending the revenues that you're earning on either distribution or a licensing or a patenting or somehow protecting your intellectual property. That is a commodity that can have value. And if you're a business person as well as an idea person, then you should have a business plan that will outline how you think you can get to profitability and or a giant market share and some estimation of what that's worth and what you have to make happen in order to realize that lovely little projection that you've put together.
I also think it's important to be realistic. And going into a highly regulated and very dangerous game and not being realistic is almost a certain path to disaster.
Yes, but as Sarah said earlier, people don't know the rules. They don't. I was working with this. My friend had a Broadway show, and I talked them into doing a Reg CF. They spent $20,000 complying with everything and getting everything ready for the Reg CF, and they had no money left for marketing.
I think a business owner needs to be realistic about the fundraising process. And that includes knowing what they know and knowing what they don't know. I'm not talking about unknown unknowns here, but I mean business owners who want to raise money from investors are taking on a huge set of serious obligations that the government will enforce, not only through monetary penalties, but they'll throw you in the slammer if you get it wrong. And they should, because the price of misbehavior is wiping people out. And in crowdfunding in particular, when you're talking about middle-class investors, you're wiping out people who can't take it. I mean, they can't possibly recover despite the limitations. So I really think that business owners who want to raise money should hire themselves as strong a team of professionals in each of the areas of the team that is reasonably necessary, and certainly one of the team members, securities lawyer, or actually anybody who sits on the team has worked with other people on teams on other projects, and they can recommend to a business owner, if you don't know a competent securities lawyer or a transfer agent or whatever, I can supply you with some referrals and you can build that team. But they need that team because the vast majority, in my experience, of business owners are not qualified to do my job, or frankly, anybody else on the professional teams that I join, just like I'm not qualified to do the business owner's job. They know their business better than me, and I'll never be as good a business owner on their business as they are. And frankly, I doubt most of them will be, well, most of them probably won't be as good a securities lawyer as me, but even if they could be, though, they shouldn't be spending their time doing my job if they can essentially buy my job, which means they've got to have a budget, but they can buy my job so they don't have to do it, and the time they don't spend, assuming they could do my job, is time they're spending on their business, which I can't do. So business owners who think they can be jack of all trades are going to find out they're really master of no financing.
Eddie?
So really what you're saying is follow the Bill Belichick rule, know your job.
Yep.
So here's a prime anecdote. This is my first, I've done 2 506Cs. Great. No
And did
problem.
you do those, as many companies are doing now, as a step to a Reg A?
I didn't think it at the time, but the same issuer, to be nameless, said, you know what, you should go into do a Reg A plus because you have a perfect track record, you understand what it's like to report to investors.
Trying to raise how much? In your
35
case.
million is what we're trying
to raise
that's
5
what we're
million.
going to try. So the point is that we were in a position where I was recommended by an issuer to go and do this, not an issuer, a platform, and hired the attorney, hired the team, marketing, and we're ready to go, or what I thought was ready to go. We're still not through the SEC, as Mark has mentioned. But that's not the point to this story. This point is that I was ready to list with a platform who I've done business prior with. And they says, you know what, I'm sorry, even though I convinced you to do this, I can't do a Reg A plus or Reg A.
You mean the platform
The
refused
platform,
to do
well,
a Reg A with you?
they're not in a position to do it.
What
So
do you mean,
speaking of,
what does it mean, not in a position to do
well,
it?
the lawyers can answer that question, but they are not ready to do a Reg A.
Oh, you mean the platform was not
Platform.
ready to do a Reg A?
But they
I
thought
see.
they would be, and they
see.
encouraged me to go in and spend the money to be in a position to do this.
Okay.
Well, I went to our attorney. Oh, I panicked. I've already spent all this money. What do I do? I'm not going to
Well,
do
now there
my
are other
own
platforms.
launch.
There are plenty of platforms. out
Okay, so there's where a competent attorney put me in the right direction. It's fine, but it's a point of what Michael's saying.
What you don't
If you don't have the right team, I was able to solve that in a day. But if I were trying to wing it myself, I'd have lost a lot of money and been one of those bad stories. Oh, stupid Reg. Hey, you can't. Whatever.
Well, we got a question.
Has anybody put together a budget for these different avenues of crowdfunding? I'm just curious because that would be.
That's a good question. Let's hear it.
I have both some, I think, information to share on one aspect of that and a comment to make about, I mean, in terms of budgeting, I think there's a very big difference between a Reg A or A plus offering and a CF offering.
Sure.
So in the A to A plus world, I'll say that the rule of thumb that I have heard, and I think I believe it, is that you should allow at least 5% of your raise to go to marketing costs. You will find that the attorney's fees vary considerably. The one thing that I would encourage people to think about if you're an issuer is don't go to somebody that it's their first rodeo, because it's not going to be their best one. I actually know someone socially who actually pulled me in for probably free consulting, which is fair enough, because he felt that he couldn't in the Boston area find a securities attorney that understood Reg A+, and he was feeling as if he was paying his attorney so that he, the issuer, could educate the attorney on what was needed.
Sure.
So I think in terms of legal costs, it all takes longer than you think it will. Whoever said that it was going to be 75 days or so, that was a lie. I think the mills of God grind slowly, and the SEC and FINRA even slower. But
So
I
tell
think
us how
that
long,
time will
eight
compress.
months?
I can tell you how we started in the summer, and I'm still not through the SEC. They're still the good news is
Yeah.
if you have a track record. they
Last
have
summer you
questions.
started.
That's true.
So they keep asking questions.
Last
on our
summer
track
you
record.
started.
Yes, I did.
So here's here from an EB5 perspective, it's different from crowdfunding. Well, most EB5 raises are done under, we always claim where we can, both Reg D, which is the exempt offering exemption now.
Reg D, using that with the EB5?
Yes, and Regulation S, which is the exemption for an offering
Foreign.
exclusively to
Offshore.
non-U.S. persons.
Right.
It is possible. Obviously, if you're doing an offering to Americans, you can't use Reg S. If you're doing an offering, well, let me say it a different way. It's nice to be in that position of having two exemptions you could rely on in case you blow one. I don't mean you. I mean in case the issuer does something wrong, like
And
they
violates.
publicly advertise and they blow Reg D, they still have Reg S they can fall back on, and therefore they have not conducted a non-exempt offering without being registered, which is... So EB5 is unique in that regard. You've got the opportunity to have the insurance policy, whereas on domestic offerings, you're not going to be able to access Regulation S. That's terrific.
Let me interrupt you. Can I take the money, let's say I have a Chinese investor, EB5, wonderful immigration attorney, working with you. Can I take the money while they're waiting for their visa, for the Department of
If
Immigration?
you tell them that's your plan and they agree to it when they invest. Now,
Knowing that they're going to have to wait before
that's correct, because the...
for even a temporary green card,
That's
right?
correct. The delay period
Full
from the time
disclosure.
an immigrant
Never
investor
a
files
mistake.
his petition for his conditional green card was 2 to 3 months when we got involved in EB5 8 years ago. It is now 16 months, which is why
16 months. So if I
To get
have all my
approval.
ducks in a row and I engage you and a great immigration attorney, and I put the money, here's the money, I got to wait 16 months for a temporary green card.
No. Here's why. In the old days, when the delay time was very short, money was not taken out of escrow until the immigrant was adjudicated. If he goes home, he takes his money with him. If you spent his money and he's going home, you can't give it back to him. So investors would not allow their money to be taken out of escrow until they were adjudicated, either the petition was granted or the petition was denied. Denied, they go home with the money. If admitted, their money goes into the project. That was 2 or 3 months.
16 months for the petition?
That was when it was 2 to 3 months. Now that it's 16, the business owner is saying, I can't wait 16 months to get the money.
No, I need it now.
And right. So there are
So does their lender.
Yeah,
well,
and the
in
employees
the
need it
EB5
now.
case, the EB5 lender is the lender in that situation, but the developer is looking for that money to come in the door. When it's 16 months, there's now mechanisms called early release that allow for a distribution of money out of escrow and into the project in substantially quicker time than 16 months. It could be when certain milestones are reached, is usually the safety precautions that are put to protect investors, as well as the fact that only a maximum of 80% of the money is ever released to a project, and the other 20 is withheld as a reserve to cash back investors who may be denied and go home. Although, frankly, a 20% attrition rate is historically abnormal. I mean, it's much less on the level of projects that we work on. But
And most of them are loans, right?
right, but still, whether the money is going to be deployed from the EB5 funding company into the project as debt or equity doesn't matter. It's when does the EB5 funding company receive its investors' money out of escrow and then is able to turn around and deploy it. And we're talking about cutting that 16-month time frame down to something more like 4, 6,
yeah.
7, 9 months time, which is much more realistic to a project, especially when you consider that EB5 is typically no more than 50% of the capital stack. That suggests the developer has got access to other money, and he can spend some or all of that first, and then when the slower EB5 money comes available at the 6-month stage, 80% of it, or 8-month, then the EB5 money can come out.
There's a gentleman over here that has a question. I
Wait
believe.
one second, because one second.
Oh, okay.
One second, because I got a really important question for Joan. Joan, normally these are debt.
Yes.
I know that you are a stock transfer agent,
Ah.
and also you're a record keeper. So would you be involved in Michael's transaction, or would that come later?
Yes, we could be, and in fact, Michael is outside counsel to a company that I've had a couple of fairly in-depth discussions
So
with.
I should engage you?
You absolutely should, because when I spoke about,
What about if it's a convertible
Integrity?
note? What do you do with that?
well, wait a minute. But
We're a trust
see,
company too.
remember, they're all
Depends,
securities.
not everyone.
Okay, EB5 investors, money may go into a project in the form of a loan, but the EB5 investor is buying an LLC membership interest or an LLC or an LP limited partner interest in the funding company. So the EB5 investor is required by the statute to always be buying equity in the funding company. The funding company aggregates all the money together and loans it.
No,
or
I didn't
deploys it as
understand why
equity.
that is.
That's an
Why can't I put the
interesting
money right in the
So what
in the
that
company?
means is
Give it to the
every
company.
EB5 investor is buying equity, even if his money ends up in
being
the
used as
project
debt.
as debt.
Yeah.
So, of course, the EB5 issuer is selling its equity to its EB5 investors and can definitely use the integrity and transparency that's provided by a company like Joan. So it's
Okay.
absolutely in every project that safeguard can be available.
You had a question?
Just more of a comment going back to the conversations about timing. And, Craig spoke earlier about dealing with people that don't have it together.
None of us up here have ever dealt with those people
That's
that
right.
don't
We
have
don't
it
know
together.
anyone like that.
My experience in the Reg A space is that when you're asked that question of time and cost, is that one, the biggest wild card is how put together the company and their documents are, because it can drag out for months.
That
All of a
is
sudden they're in
that
the
is
middle of the
true in every aspect of not just there's the accounting side of that, there's the legal side of that. Just sort of going through the, let's call it the discovery process of if you're an issuer and you think you want to raise money for a business that you're in, then there's a discovery process that a good securities attorney will lead you through as to what are you trying to do, what do you want to accomplish, how do you think you want that to work, and then they'll lead you through like what's a good structure for you to use for your corporate financing. There's a lot of choices out there. I think actually Blaine mentioned a whole bunch of them, the alphabet soup. I mean, you can file an S1 if you're doing an A+ offering. You don't have to file the 1A. You can file the S1. Some attorneys will charge a different price based on how that might work. You can do a Rule 147 offering. You can do a 144. There's a lot of choices you can make. The aspects of the Jobs Act are only one portion of that. So Regulation A and A+ are just not right for everyone. Just like Reg 506B or C, there's different considerations for each of those. And there's other more esoteric ways to get at what you want. And so having a good securities attorney should kind of fall early on in your little planning process.
Very early.
Very early. Because that will help speed a lot of other
And you won't
things
make
along.
the mistakes that you might without that guidance.
Yeah.
I'm a securities attorney, so trust me, I get the.
Oh.
Preaching to the choir?
Yes.
Like, someone mentioned, Sarah mentioned a company that had gone in default basically in the state of Delaware. But I've seen companies that issue stock that was never authorized.
Uh-huh.
All of a sudden, as the attorney, you're doing a tremendous amount of cleanup. So you had no idea that when you said, hey, we will do the Reg A.
For a certain price, and then you find
Yes.
out some horrible.
So doing a set price is not always a feasible option
It's
on the
usually-
attorney side of things.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to is how buttoned up is the company and its personnel. I mean, when we take on a company and we're appointed transfer agent, we have a list of legal documents that we ask for. And sometimes people, especially in this space, where they're not accustomed to that. Well, why do you need that? Why do I need to supply that? It's like, why do I need to give you a certificate of incumbency? Why do I need to give you a list of authorized people? Why do I need to give you blah, blah, blah? It's so that we have done our due diligence to say that you're a real company. Yep, we look at your articles of incorporation and your bylaws, and we do KYC and AML checks on you, the issuer, not your investors, on you. Because we want to know that we need a board of directors resolution appointing us as transfer agent, because we'll be the keeper of the master security holder file. Guess who the SEC blames if that's not in good order? It's us. So there's a certain liability involved there. Therefore, you want all the due diligence. Now, to get the legal documents in place, I've had innumerable people say to me, so how fast can you get our stuff on board? Well, that largely depends on you.
Yes, it
because
does.
I need this list of 12 documents from you, and I need them to be in good order, making good sense, signed by the right people. That might take you, I've actually had someone do that in 3 days. I told him he had set the land speed record for a general counsel turnaround on documents. Never seen it happen faster. I've had companies that have dragged that on for months. I mean, sometimes it's we're not having a board meeting until next quarter and we don't want to call a phone meeting or have a special meeting. Okay, fine. Then putting you on
you, not
live
me.
on our systems is dependent on certain
We'll
things.
put you on the
In
calendar.
my experience, a reasonable budget for conducting an EB5 raise, just for the transaction cost of raising the money, we tell clients it's going to run between 125 to 175,000, maybe 200.
Is that immigration and securities work?
That's the immigration work for the company, not for the individual investors. They have to do their own private immigration at their cost. But the company, the management, is going to have a budget of between 125 to 175. Who's at the low end? And well, first,
For the securities part of it?
no. That includes us.
Okay.
But we have a budget range too. We tell clients it's probably going to run you, a certain amount to a certain amount within that. But that larger budget includes that entire team that I mentioned. If you've got Joan on your team, her company's fees are going to be included in the budget, so that the client has a big picture idea. What's the transaction cost? If it's $200,000, that's 1% of a $20 million raise. In EB5, a $20 million raise is not huge. In EB5, I said we usually do Reg S and Reg D. So if you stripped out the immigration side of things in EB5, you'd essentially have a Reg D domestic offering done usually under Rule 506B, which prohibits public advertising.
Right.
And now, increasingly, EB5 issuers are looking to go to 506C because they want to pay less for the money, and most of the money is charged them in that. I told you it's typically 4 to 6% money, which is still an attractive rate for most businesses, certainly developers, not all, but most. So what is most of that 4 to 6% going? It's going to pay the foreign broker who brought the investor into the deal. If you can cut out the foreign broker because you can market directly to the investors yourselves through 506C, you could cut out
You could cut it in half.
1 to 3% from that 4 to 6. Yeah, I cut it in half. Okay, you're already paying the investor pretty much nothing.
We got a question here.
Follow up with Eddie.
Yes.
So, once you chose the platform, changed the platform, you're waiting on the SEC. So you've got your campaign ready, you've got your marketing ready, you're just waiting on SEC.
You got that right.
Okay, then second question for Joan. So, are the platforms or the portals, let's say, that FINRA regulates, are they mostly including your services already, or is that something that the individual companies that are raising are going to have to pay for in addition?
There's all kinds of variations of that. So
No, one thing about-
some issuers want to contract with us directly. Some portals want to actually be the name transfer agent and have us act on their behalf. I mean, we have a pretty long-standing example of that in our business on another side of the house, and that's that we have a pretty significant ADR business. Well, the ADRs are actually managed, and the name transfer agents are Bank of New York Mellon and Citibank, 2 separate books of business, but we're actually doing the work for both of them. So weirdly, we have company records on our books, so we'll have 2 ADR companies for, really it's a single issuer, but one represents the Bank of New York position, one represents the Citibank position.
Now, Eddie, follow up to his question.
Sure.
While you're waiting, are you testing the waters and
No.
taking names?
No,
Why not? You can do that.
I know.
Don't-
I'd rather just go out. I don't
And
want.
get a real yes?
Yeah, I don't want someone to say, yeah, I'm interested, and then, oh, by the way, I'm get an email 2 months later. Hey, remember you committed $100,000? Huh?
I went off and bought a beach house with that.
That's it. No.
I'm with,
no
I'm
interest.
with him. I've never been a fan of testing the waters. It's like,
We're not
you know.
crazy about it either.
Because you got to do essentially the same marketing campaign you would
You gotta do it
you
3
would
times.
do later, right?
Yeah.
So-
Plus,
Okay.
I plan to launch to existing investors, family, extended people that I know in the business for 25 years first before we ever do our official launch. It's like the restaurant soft opening. You know, make sure the food's on.
But as a securities lawyer on the panel, I would just offer a caution, and that is that if you are testing the waters, you know, fraud is still actionable, even if you never consummate the transaction. If you do consummate the transaction, then the pre-sale marketing, even the testing, is part of the sales process. And if there's misbehavior in that, there's still liability that can attach, which is why a lot of people say, I don't need, if I don't really gotta test the waters, I'd rather not until everything is completely
Now, the
set.
site, this is the question for the attorneys, and Mark's here too. The site is live because we're gathering SEO. So
Sure.
we're not really taking or soliciting anybody to invest.
But you're
we're
still
trying
letting
to
people
build
know about
that-
your company.
Well, no, I haven't even sent an email that, I'm putting blogs together in the name of of impacthousing.com, and so the
Okay.
people are coming of interest, but we're
Lisa.
not soliciting them.
Yeah, just to expand on what Joan said, as a transfer agent, I mean, a lot of times, I know that Joan and I converse fairly often.
Yes, we do.
On people that come to us where maybe we don't handle that and Computer Shares does, and we have a very friendly relationship. But, you know, one of the things that I have learned over the past several years being involved in this space is, as a transfer agent, we get calls. You know, Eddie is you know, a wonderful client of ours, and when he came to us, we were giving him some suggestions along
Absolutely.
the way.
Part of the team.
That's a huge advantage because they will help you if you talk to them early. And usually you'll talk to somebody, I'm thinking about an offering, you'll give them a phone call or two, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's a huge advantage if you can query the people you plan to be working with ahead of time.
Well,
And we, if I could just
Sure.
expand on that, you know, Mark has a blog, and he was a big help to me in the beginning as far as an education standpoint of setting expectations. But the expectations, if you do your research, I mean, the internet, you know, handy dandy Google on your iPhone or
Right.
whatever you use,
Right.
is very effective in finding credible information that all of us and our potential clients and business partners, I mean, we're all here to expand upon our knowledge in business, right?
Right.
So, you know, those clients, if you set realistic expectations for the people that reach out to you, we will all be more successful in
Right.
everything that we do.
Right.
The challenge is, you know, if Eddie calls someone and says, yeah, I could do it because they want to be there's always going to be someone who's got to be the first. We did Elio, and it was the first, and we were the first transfer agent to do it, and there
Yeah.
were pitfalls, not as a result of what we were doing or not doing, but things
But
that
because
came
it was
up that
first.
nobody knew.
Yeah.
Just being first.
Yep.
And we learned from it, and with everyone in the room, we were able to educate ourselves, educate the issuer, educate some of the very, very unsophisticated, very unsophisticated shareholders. And it's been a learning progress, but I want to emphasize that without the team of people in this room and outside of this room that specialize in this,
Yeah.
if you're not reaching out to your, you know, significant others, if you will, that are in this space, I
Right.
suggest that you do, because all of us have what to share.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, there's
And
plenty
everybody
of
has a
business in the
vested
whole-
interest to make this work and not fail.
Yes.
And there's
Right.
plenty of business for everybody in a very, you know, cohesive. There's going to be some people that, you know, price and personality, but you know, if Eddie didn't share some of the things, I wouldn't have met some of the people that Eddie shared, and vice versa. And
Sure.
you know, we all have to we have to all play in the same
Absolutely.
sandbox, if you will. So-
I'd like to say one thing in closing, first of all, thank you all for coming, and thanks Sydney for a wonderful day.
Here, here.
And as to the future of this industry, I'd like to give you a little statistic. In 1930, only 8% of the people in America had a refrigerator. Everybody else had an ice box. Just to tell you how old I am, I remember seeing an ice truck when I was a kid. Okay? So in 1930, 8% of the people had a refrigerator. In 1940, 10 years later, only 30% of the people had a refrigerator. That's how slow things are to be adopted, even though the refrigerator would make ice. So crowdfunding is going to take a little while, but there's nothing really that can stop it. It's just too efficient way of funding. So thank you all for coming today and being here. It's been a wonderful day. Sydney, thank you very much. Let you finish up, say final words.